Everyone, Marissa LaRocca here. I first just want to thank Alexandra from Different and Able for giving me this opportunity to be part of the Different and Able community. I am the best-selling author of 2 books, which I will talk about. I'm also an eating disorder survivor. I'll talk about that too. I work full-time for the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which is the largest online nutrition school in the world. And in my spare time, I have my own company called Pilot Press, where I work as a book coach and editor with authors and influencers who write books to transform our generation. So all of that said, let's get personal, let's get deep, okay? So I'm excited to be speaking to this community because, you know what, pretty much ever since I had conscious awareness, I have felt different than the people around me. No, I don't have a physical disability, but there are many things internally that set me apart. And pretty much since I can remember in elementary school, I just never felt like I fit in. I didn't really feel inclined to make friends or speak out, you know, make connections. I didn't necessarily agree with the school system even from a young age. I was just like the shy kid. I was just the kid that sat closer to the front of the bus. You know what I mean. And on top of that, I went to a very small private Catholic school, so it was a little bit of an interesting experience. From there, I had a little bit of a culture shock when I went to a public high school, which was much bigger than my Catholic school, and it was just diverse, and I didn't know how to dress. I didn't understand what to do with the fact that people were speaking out in class and doing drugs sometimes, and I just remember walking to the entranceway of the cafeteria for the first time and seeing this massive room full of people. And I asked myself this question, where do I sit? And with those 4 words, I was really asking myself the question, where do I belong? And in asking myself, where do I belong? I was asking myself, who am I? Where do I fit? Do I fit? And the answer was actually no. I ended up spending most of my lunch periods in high school eating my lunch in a bathroom stall. I would discreetly peel the aluminum foil off of my peanut butter and jelly sandwich and hope that nobody saw my feet under the stall. I didn't fit there, and I didn't know why at the time. So here's the thing with kids, okay? And I was a kid. Kids don't have this mechanism in their brain that maybe adults do, where they can see someone different than them and say, oh, I'm different than that person, but I'm okay the way I am. Kids, almost automatically, I think, if they don't fit into their surroundings and what's being shown to them as normal and cool, they internalize shame. They feel like I am different, therefore I am wrong. I am different, therefore I should be what I'm seeing around me, what I'm seeing reflected back at me. And I don't see myself in my surroundings, therefore something must be wrong with me. How awful that this is happening to kids. How awful that this has been happening to kids. How awful that it happened to me. That's what happened to me. And what makes me so different internally? I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with the school system. As I said, I think people should be able to learn more on their own, based off their own intrinsic curiosity and values. I'm a creative person. I don't think it's natural to sit for that many hours a day. I don't think it's natural to put people who are introverts and maybe highly sensitive people, if you've heard of that word before, I am a highly sensitive person. I don't think it's so natural to throw these people into these like social hierarchy type environments such as school, okay? So I didn't really agree with it. I didn't really flourish. I mean, I got good grades, but I didn't really flourish socially in that kind of environment. Okay, so much internalized shame. Then from around the transition from high school to college, I realized that I am gay. So I thought at the time, well, awesome, maybe this is why I have felt different for my whole life, because I'm gay. Now everything makes sense. No wonder I never felt like everyone else. But by the time I got to college, now I went to SUNY Purchase in New York, which is known to be a bit of a artsy, open-minded place. And it sure was. And theoretically, I thought, okay, now that I'm here in SUNY Purchase, I'm surrounded by people who are more like me. I should feel comfortable here. And in so many ways I did, but in so many ways I still didn't. I still felt like there was this wall between me and other people. I still felt different. I still felt socially anxious, tremendously, all the time. And because of that, I ended up developing an eating disorder to kind of self-soothe and cope and control something, I think, to deal with this void that I felt inside and these feelings of shame that were just so baked into my personality at that point, so ingrained, so insidious, so pervasive. I just still felt that those were there. You know what, to this day I still do, but I'll get there. It's dangerous. It's dangerous and damaging to not show kids all the possibilities for who they could be. So for example, in my case, like when I was being brought up in the world, coming of age, I did not have any like gay role models. I did not have any representation, but let alone sexuality, because that doesn't define a person. I didn't really have role models that I thought were cool. Like back when I grew up, I think the world has changed, and hopefully the younger generation now has many more role models, but I didn't really have role models that I saw myself as like wanting to be, or that I could aspire to, that I felt inspired by. So I didn't know that I was gay. I didn't know a lot of things about myself. I didn't know what my options were. I didn't have representation. The way I felt on the inside did not match anything about the world that was being shown to me, and that caused a kind of depression, and that caused a lot of shame, and that caused me to feel like something was wrong with me. So I developed an eating disorder in college, and I would just start running. I remember the first time I went running, it was in the rain, the pouring rain, and I just ran until I couldn't feel my legs anymore. I just felt so numb. I just felt so removed. I started to dissociate. I started to really count and calculate the hours between meals. I started to count calories and restrict. Maybe you want to call it anorexia. That's kind of what I dealt with for a couple of years. And then it turned into bulimia. If you want to call it bulimia, I started purging. I started having exercise bulimia, where I would just exercise and exercise. And I wasn't really able to eat without feeling guilty, without feeling obsessed with it, okay? It totally consumed my life. It totally took me away from my family, my friends. It made it really impossible to have any close relationships at that time, unfortunately. It was a huge distraction. So by the time I exited college, by the time I graduated, I was still dealing with the eating disorder a little bit, mostly the bulimic part, and I was still recovering, and I felt super inspired to write a book. So this is when I started working on my first book, which is called Starving in Search of Me, a coming-of-age story of overcoming an eating disorder and finding self-acceptance. Now, when I tell you that I spent hours and weeks and months and years writing this book, I mean, anyone who's ever attempted to write some kind of memoir type book maybe could understand. When you're writing about something personal, it's not just about getting it down on paper. It's about finding yourself. It's about finding your truth. I feel like I had to write the entire book 5 times before I reached the book, because it was such a journey. It was a meditation. It was so much reflecting. Sometimes I'd even just close my eyes and try to get into the memory of the eating disorder, because I felt like I had to understand it. I felt like I had something meaningful to share with other people, and more than anything, I had to heal myself, and I knew that that's what that book was about for me. So I released that book a few years ago, and I do consider myself fully recovered from my eating disorder today. I know some people who have struggled with eating disorders or other sort of addictions. Not everybody likes the word recovered. Some people think that you never really recover, you just find healthier coping mechanisms, which in ways is probably true for me. Like I said, I still deal with those feelings of shame that I have dealt with my whole life, because they have been baked into my personality. But as I have gone through my own journey, wrote the book, put that chapter behind me, and really, done the work. I've also been to a good amount of therapy. I think that I have healed parts of myself that I will never go back to struggling the way that I did. I have truly learned how to cope like an adult with my emotions. I've learned how to communicate better. I've learned how to set boundaries better. I've learned really what I value, and more than anything, I've learned that I like what's different about me. I no longer feel that just because I feel different than the people around me, I no longer feel like different is wrong. In fact, I feel like different is awesome. I feel like the kind of people that I want to surround myself with and hang out with are going to be those people who are different and who know what it's like to not fit in, to go through something. Those are the reformers. Those are the people who, they don't see a place for themselves in the world, so they knock down trees. They are the ones who pave the new roads and create the new paths, and they're the great inventors and artists of the world. And I want to be one of those people. I want to be a seeker and a seer. And you know, I've dedicated most of my career to working with those people, whether through my own writing. So Starving in Search of Me was my first book. The name of my second book is Everyone is a Freak, Anonymous Confessions about Sex, Sexuality, and Desire, which I'm not going to talk too much about in this video, but it was more for, my attempt with that book was to kind of unify the LGBTQ plus community with the heterosexual community and just show the diversity and the huge spectrum, that everything is a spectrum and everything is a beautiful spectrum, and no two snowflakes in nature are alike, and that's perfect, and that's the way it's supposed to be. You know, so I'm a strong believer in that. So I have dedicated my writing career to writing for people who feel different. And nothing in this world feels more fulfilling to me than when I get a message from someone, usually a younger female, from another part of the country or another part of the world, who says to me, I read your book and it transformed me, or I saw myself in this book. It saved my life, maybe some people have said to me, and nothing could feel more fulfilling, because I wish I had my book when I was struggling. I wrote it for people who, you know, would feel, I wanted to be a companion for people who were feeling like I felt, maybe for people who are in a different stage of their journey where they haven't yet found the light, if you will, okay? And then with my company, Pilot Press, I specifically enjoy working with people who, you know, like me, have gone through something and maybe haven't felt like they fit in. I'm working with Sophia Giganti right now, who is a personal trainer, who has dealt with a lot of health challenges throughout her life. She has really, really overcome a lot and is doing awesome with her own business, training clients and having her own studio, and she's been awesome to work with. She actually did a video here for Different and Able as well. Another author I'm working with right now lost her husband to suicide many years ago, and she is a brilliant writer, and you know, she just gets it. She sees something that not everyone sees. She sees through the darkness to the light, which is, and her book's name is actually Beyond the Dark, but that's what I aim to do. I think that what we need to do as maybe people who feel different is find ourselves through the muck. The world can be very confusing sometimes. There's all these influences telling us who we should be. We need to really just find ourselves and learn how to love ourselves and learn how to accept ourselves and learn how to take care of ourselves, because the world doesn't always do that for us. If you are an introverted, highly sensitive person like me, I have come to know, like, I need to spend a lot of time by myself or I start to feel a little bit ungrounded, maybe even insane. So I spend a lot of time by myself when I can. I think that if you sit with your darkness for long enough, it will turn to light. And my first book, Starving in Search of Me, is a little bit about that message as well. I feel like I made friends with my demons. I feel like I sat with them for long enough that they became angels. I digress. I am going to wrap up this video, but I want to leave you with my favorite quote, which is by Kurt Cobain, and it's, I would rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I am not. Nobody is gonna have everybody in the world love them, and that should never be our goal. I think that we should just hope to find our people, our tribe, our little pocket of the world that makes us feel safe and sane and happy. So I want you all to know that you are absolutely perfect just the way you are, and I hope that you take care of yourself. Take care, everybody, and I hope to see you soon.